Today we're talking about a potential trade between the Leafs and the St. Louis Blues that could be a blockbuster magnitude before the NHL trade deadline. We also have some trade talk around the LA Kings, the Edmonton Oilers, the Ottawa Senators, all kinds more rumors from the Vancouver Canucks. Lots of stuff happening there. We had a big day. Media availability from Jim Rutherford really gave us a lot to talk about. News from the NHL waiver wire. We have a big signing in Minnesota and more. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we do have a lot of NHL news to cover today and lots of trade chatter from around the league. Of course, we're getting closer to the NHL trade deadline, about 6-7 weeks away, and certainly things are starting to heat up and we have lots to talk about out of the Canucks organization. First up, though, news from the NHL waiver wire. We had a couple players on waivers yesterday, most notably goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic of the Detroit Red Wings, and he has in fact cleared. Of course, he's in the final year of his contract, not having a great season so far, and Yzerman and Detroit was not afraid to put him through waivers here to make sure they could keep Magnus Hellberg. It was the main reason here. Of course, Ville Husso has also played well, while Nedeljkovic has struggled. So he, along with teammate Jacob Verana, both making substantial money at the NHL level, both now down in the American Hockey League. So Nedeljkovic was reassigned after clearing today as well. So certainly, I'm a little bit surprised nobody gave him a chance. But at the same time, I understand why they wouldn't with the injuries he's had this year and the limited amount of play without really seeing a lot of good results. But it'll be interesting to see if we can find his way back to the NHL or how this is going to work. I'm not sure he really has a future in Detroit. Speaking of young goaltenders, though, the Carolina Hurricanes sent down Peter Kochetkov. Of course, Kochetkov has been up with the Hurricanes organization playing a lot this season due to the long absence of Freddie Andersen. Andersen's now back. They did carry 3 goalies for a short stretch, but he's been sent down to the American Hockey League. I mean, he was Rookie of the Month. He was doing phenomenal. The stats on him are tremendous. It certainly has nothing to do with his play. This is right now is mainly just a path of least resistance so they don't have to trade or lose another player on waivers. Of course, we've seen a case like Nedeljkovic going on waivers. Well, Kochetkov is still waivers exempt because he's not gained enough NHL experience for that to be required for him. So right now the Canes will go with Freddie Andersen and Antti Ranta. They could maybe call Kochetkov all back up for the playoffs if he doesn't make it up before then, or if one of the other guys gets hurt again, he'll be back up as well. Certainly think he has a big future in Carolina. It's a shame that he has to spend time in the American Hockey League because he's certainly capable of being a full-time NHL goalie, in my opinion. But like I said, it's just a path of least resistance. If Carolina can figure out another way to get him some playing time, they will. But at the same time, where they have Freddie Andersen and Antti Ranta on NHL contracts, it does make that challenging when everybody is healthy. The Colorado Avalanche got some good news with the return of Valeri Nichushkin. Nichushkin, of course, has missed a substantial time this year, as has several other members, key important players as well, of the Avalanche roster. And so Nichushkin will be a welcome return. Of course, the Avalanche played early today and defeated the Detroit Red Wings, picking up a big victory there at home. Some really unfortunate news out of Toronto regarding some injuries. Young prospect Nick Robertson, who we know got hurt back a few weeks ago in December. They were optimistic that he was going to be able to avoid surgery and not be out for too long, but that shoulder injury is worse than expected. He does require surgery. It's going to be a 6-month recovery. So Nick Robertson is done for the season. So that's, like I said, bad news. I mean, he was going to probably spend the rest of the year, if he was healthy, in the American Hockey League, maybe get a chance to play in the playoffs. Certainly, there's lots of rumors around the Leafs about some potential upgrades they'll try to make before the playoffs as well. And now we know that Nick Robertson, likely because of this, is not going to be one of the future pieces that they end up trading out. He's had a lot of injuries and bad luck in his young career so far. So we'll see how he bounces back next year and how much of an impact this will have on him in the long term. They're also going to be without Mac Hollowell. You can say his season is pretty much over as well. He has a fractured kneecap, and that recovery time is approximately 4 months. So being middle of January, February, March, April, that puts him pretty much to the end of the regular season. I guess depending on where things go for playoffs between the American Hockey League team at the Marlies, maybe he returns for that, but he's going to, his regular season is likely done right now as well. We also had a big signing in Minnesota today, where the Minnesota Wild have signed young former first-round pick Matt Boldy to a 7-year contract extension at $7 million per season. Of course, Boldy said a pending restricted free agent. He would have been an RFA at the end of this campaign into the summer. He and the Wild, of course, has been rumored through a few NHL insiders in the past couple of days that they were negotiating and that things were progressing towards getting something done. Right now, Boldy has appeared in 89 career games so far in his young career for the Wild, and he's put up 68 points. He's certainly a big piece of the future. I don't think he's anywhere near his his ceiling. Of course, he's still, like I said, just coming out of his entry-level rookie contract. So lots of growth still for this young man. And this contract for right now might seem expensive by some, but I think longer term, he's going to grow into this and far exceed it, especially considering where we're likely going to see the salary cap go in the next 2 or 3 years, and what players putting up that type of point production will likely be getting a couple years down the road. It's another good signing for Bill Guerin in Minnesota. Of course, they're going to have some tough salary cap years ahead of them here in the next immediate future with the buyouts of Zach Parise and Ryan Suter having some big penalties over the next couple of seasons. So having the most stability is certainly going to have a positive impact here. But one of their young players like Boldy, very important. They do have a bunch of other players as well that are on expiring deals, some of which they would consider keeping, but they want to get this done before they really go too far, getting a lot of the other deals that'll likely be cheaper and shorter term to be have a better idea of their cap situation before they get those done. So now, as I mentioned, we have lots of talk about in Vancouver. Jim Rutherford, the president of the Vancouver Canucks, had a press conference today, and it was a doozy. There was all kinds of things covered. Now, one of the main reasons why this press conference was called, in fact, the main area was around the Tanner Pearson hand injury. Of course, we've talked about here in recent days that Pearson, of course, was hurt. He was expected to be returning, later in the season, and then it was revealed that he was going to require another surgery, and his season was over. His teammate Quinn Hughes spoke out to the media when he was interviewed and said that it was handled wrong and handled poorly. So obviously that's got a lot of people talking. The NHLPA is now involved. Of course, that's what the Players Union is there for, to protect them and make sure that they're getting everything that they're supposed to be getting. And certainly they're going to be reviewing the whole scenario. So Rutherford did say that the NHLPA was meeting internally about that scenario and that they will be discussing it with the Canucks and likely reviewing everything that's taken place. And he said that if anything was done that shouldn't have been, or if there's any issues with the policy, then they'll certainly make changes to how things are done with the medical team and make sure that things are implemented right away. But he did go on to talk a lot about a lot of other things, which was, certainly quite eye-opening, you could say. When it comes to the coaching change that many are expecting to happen, we've heard Elliot Friedman talk about the fact that Rick Tocchet has basically been hired by the Vancouver Canucks. It's believed that he will be the next coach. I know a few days ago they were saying it could be upwards of 4 weeks before it happens. Now they're saying likely within 2 weeks or less is what the rumor is currently sitting at. So of course he was asked about some of these rumors that have been floating around through the NHL insiders, and he basically said and admitted that he's been talking to coaching candidates since early this season. So clearly, even though Bruce Boudreau had a good run with the Vancouver Canucks to finish out last year, and they had a real positive, strong finish. Of course, Boudreau was hired by the owner himself, Francisco Aquilini, before Jim Rutherford was officially hired. So he is not Rutherford's guy, essentially. So, they basically sounded like they've been butting heads the entire time since Rutherford has come on board. He's talked to the media numerous times, criticizing his systems and how they play, and it's just really unusual relationship and how he's publicly bashed Boudreau in numerous times. It's really unfair, and I personally used to be a Rutherford fan. I really liked a lot of things he did in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I don't like how he's going about handling things in Vancouver, to be completely honest. I've lost a lot of respect in how they've publicly bashed Boudreau. I don't think that the coach is necessarily the issue here. You can say what you want about the team. The team desperately needs change. There's no doubt about that. but I don't think the coach is the issue. And based on how they've played recently, I think it's fair to say the players like Bruce and will still play extremely hard for him. So I don't think that that's really, part of the issue. But certainly Rutherford feels differently. Now, his quote on Bruce was that he is our coach right now. So that's really it. Like, it's kind of unfair in my opinion, to put Bruce Boudreau through this to be the coach for the next couple of weeks when they're kind of, sounds like they're finalizing everything with Rick Tocchet. Freeman also mentioned that they're kind of finalizing how it's all going to look and work. Who else might be involved in Rick Tocchet's staff? There's some talk about Sergei Gonchar, former NHL defenseman. Of course, this is all the Pittsburgh connections. If you remember this, Rutherford and Alvin, of course, run the Canucks. They came from Pittsburgh. Rick Tocchet, longtime assistant coach in Pittsburgh. Sergei Gonchar, former Penguin player, former Penguin assistant coach as well. Like, he's worked there. Really good with the defenseman. Gonchar's done a tremendous job. It would be a great asset to the Vancouver Blue Line, no doubt. It just, like I said, I just feel bad for Bruce, given how everything is going down. When it comes to the actual roster and other things we might see, Rutherford admitted that when he first took the job in Vancouver, he thought the team would need minor surgery. Now he's saying it's pretty obvious that the roster needs major surgery, and that certainly not all of the core players are going to be remaining with the club, and that there will be trades made, and some of the core players are definitely not going to be a part of the team's future, which is, again, not shocking considering the names like Horvat and Besser, and to a degree Miller, that we've heard in the trade rumor mill for the last number of months. So he certainly admits that it's not as good as, or I guess a bigger change is needed than he thought. He also says that he's disappointed with his own job, basically saying that he thought that, it would be easier to create the cap space and make moves, and it's proven to be a lot more difficult than he ever expected it to be. He also went on to talk about Bo Horvat, saying he feels they've made their best offer, and that, they're basically talking trade. He confirmed that 100%, basically saying that they have a trade offer on the table for Horvat. And he said for the most part, you would consider it a fair trade based on Horvat's career, but based on how Horvat's playing this year, that it's not quite good enough, basically, to kind of, summarize what he was saying. So ultimately, Horvat's been, a 50, 60-point player most of his career. Now, all of a sudden, he's on pace for like a crazy amount, probably 50 goals or more, which is unusual, but obviously good for him. He's going to drive up his value. So certainly I understand, based on where things are at, he's going to expect more. But he also confirmed that when they make trades, that they don't really want draft picks, that they want young players that are already somewhat established. So you're probably looking at players anywhere from 19, 20, 21, 22 that are young, can be a big part of the team's future, but they're already able to take a roster spot. They've already developed enough since being drafted that they know they're NHL players at the very least. He said a lot of draft picks can take 3, 4, 5 years to be able to play in the NHL and have an impact, and they don't want to wait that long. They want players that can help a lot sooner, a lot quicker. So certainly they don't want to call it a rebuild. They want to call it a retool, is what he said. So that certainly goes along with what we've heard. So, will we see Besser and Horvat traded? Kuzmenko is another name that came up. He did say that they are negotiating with Kuzmenko on a new contract, and he is a player they would like to keep. He also said that some contracts are very difficult to trade because the value is just not there to go along with the contract, and that they will consider some buyouts at the end of the season if some of these contracts and players are just not able to be moved, that they need to continue to find a way to find salary cap flexibility. So to me, it's very interesting to see how this is all playing out in Vancouver. I personally thought when Rutherford was hired in Vancouver that him and Boudreau would get along well. Then they brought in Patrick Allvin. I expected more change before this, and I just expected something a little bit different. Like I said, I've lost a little bit of respect for Rutherford, on how he's talked about Boudreau in the media. This just been, it's fine if it's fine. He's entitled to his opinion. He's entitled to think these things. It is a business. He can make changes as he sees fit. I don't know. I just don't like how it's being handled myself. So now that the Canucks are going to be heading home after a road trip, I do wonder if that coaching change might come sooner than later. It's been, reported by Elliotte Friedman that he feels that Rutherford and the Canucks want to make one announcement at one time that they'll be relieving Bruce Boudreau and whatever other members of the coaching staff, and then bringing in Tocchet and whoever else as well. Just a one fell swoop, where some people are saying, why don't you just let him move on now and go with an interim coach for a week or two if you need to, just to get Bruce out of there, because it's not fair to him based on what's going down here. I mean, I'm sure he sees reports and knows it's a matter of time. And he said himself that he just gets up every day and goes to work until he's told not to. And it's a sad state of affairs there in Vancouver. And we'll see what happens, but expect significant change and a coaching change in short order. Pierre LeBrun, an NHL insider for TSN and The Athletic, is again linking captain of the St. Louis Blues, Ryan O'Reilly, to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Also mentions the possibility of Ivan Barbashev possibly being on their radar as well. I do think it's fair to say Kyle Dubas is going to make some attempts to make some more upgrades again this year. I don't think Nick Robertson is going to be traded now that he's done for the season. I know they don't want to trade Matthew Nyes. They're not crazy with their first round pick, but they're not going to be able to get some top players here without moving something more significant. So I'm not sure exactly what they were, look to move out, but adding O'Reilly if they can. This rumor keeps popping up every so often, and it's been probably the third or fourth time from different reporters that I've seen here in the last number of weeks. So I do think that it's fair to say that they are considering Ryan O'Reilly. Ivan Barbashev, also a real solid top six guy. It would be really challenging, though, salary cap-wise, to make it all work. So I'm not sure what they would have to end up moving out. You're probably looking at, some players that are making more than the minimum. So guys like maybe a Kerfoot or an Engvall or something of that nature. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but, Pierre LeBrun does continue to talk about a potential blockbuster deal that we might see between Toronto and St. Louis. I'm not sure, like I said, what the Blues would want from the Leafs. I would imagine a first-round pick is going to probably be necessary, especially if they won't, if Robertson's hurt and Nyes is not going to be made available. I don't know what Doug Armstrong in St. Louis is really going to want for his captain, assuming his trade does take place. Pierre LeBrun's also connecting the LA Kings to Jacob Chychrun in Arizona. There's also reports saying that they're not convinced, by some NHL insiders at least, that the Coyotes are in a big hurry to trade Chychrun, that it's believed 3 pieces are what's going to be required to get a deal done now. Looking at 2 first-round picks and a player that's not, like a younger-ish player that can take an NHL roster spot. So, LA and Chychrun do make sense. We've heard Ottawa a lot before. I'm not sure that's going to re-emerge. I don't think the Sens want to spend that big of a asking price. I think they'd love to have Chychrun, but not for the price tag that's coming up. I mean, could LA offer a young defenseman in return, like a Jordan Spence or a Brandt Clark? That probably would be very, important to getting it done. I don't know that they really want to, but if what they have on their blue line now, you bring in Chychrun, all these young D can't play in the NHL. There won't be spots for them all, so to move one of them does make sense. But Brandt Clark, to me, is probably their, I would think he'd be looked upon as being their biggest up-and-coming young defenseman, so I wouldn't think he'd be the guy they'd want to move, but I know they're quite high on Jordan Spence too, so be interesting to see if the Kings do pull this off. They have the prospects to do it, for sure, in the picks, so we'll see what happens, but right now, NHL insiders appear to be favoring the Kings as maybe being one of the main teams on the Chychrun wagon. The Ottawa Senators, according to Elliot Friedman, are still looking to trade for a defenseman. Of course, they've been in on Chychrun before. I'm not sure they're going to circle back because of the deep price tag. But Matt Dumba in Minnesota continues to be a possibility. They even said that, Friedman and Merrick talking on 32 Thoughts even said that when it comes to the Senators and a defenseman, they might even do a rental. Even though they're not projecting to be a playoff team, they want to show the fans and everybody in this organization that they're not giving up. They want to play hard, they want to finish strong, and they want to get themselves as high in the standings as they possibly can and set themselves up to build upon that for next year. Of course, there's a pending ownership change coming, and they want to just make sure this team is not giving up. I mean, it makes sense in a way to be like, okay, we're not quite ready for this yet. Let's get some more young guys in there to see what we can develop. And, that's not really the approach they want to take, according to Friedman and other NHL insiders. They want a defenseman that can help and help now. So whether it be Dumba or somebody else, don't be shocked if the Sens do pull off some kind of a D-man trade in the not-too-distant future. The Edmonton Oilers are also going to be required to make a move in the not-too-distant future, probably this week. Evander Kane is really close to be cleared for return. That could happen in the next couple of days. And to get him a roster spot, somebody's got to go. So who's it going to be? Friedman said that look for the Oilers to either make a trade or to end up with a surprise player on waivers. It could be Jesse Puljujarvi. It could be Warren Foegele, Derek Ryan. It's kind of difficult to say exactly what route they're going to go. We know at some point Jesse Puljujarvi won't be coming back to Edmonton. He's either going to be traded or something's going to happen, if not now, in the offseason. He'd probably be one of their first top picks to make it happen, but difficult to say where he could end up. I mean, there's lots of teams around, I think, that could be a fit for him, including some that have some of his former teammates with Team Finland. Maybe that might be a good spot to try to resurrect his career. I'm not really sure, but the Oilers need a roster spot, and they're at a point where a guy like Puljujarvi or Foegele or somebody is going to have to go because they need Evander Kane in that lineup to help score some goals and get this offense back on track, which has been getting a little bit better, but they've certainly missed him in his production. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.